Welcome to the Sounds of Resistance channel. In Ukraine, the ropes on the Russian front have come to the breaking point. The fact that the Ukrainian warriors are taking back the regions occupied by Russia one by one bothers Russian leader Vladimir Putin a lot. After the attacks of the Ukrainian army, Putin is attacking with fury indiscriminately in Ukraine. Putin's army is taking the lives of many civilians with its bombs attacks on Ukrainian city center. The Russian army is not only targeting civilian settlements. In its attacks, the Russian army is also damaging power plants and infrastructure in Ukraine. Residents of Ukraine are rebelling against Putin's attacks. The resident of Ukraine, Zelensky, calls for the Russian leader Putin's attacks in Ukraine to be ended as soon as possible on the grounds that they are against human rights and international law. Despite the reaction of the whole world, Russian leader Putin continues his illegal attacks in Ukraine without slowing down. The Russian leader has signed another scandal in Ukraine in the past month. Putin announced the so-called annexation of 4 regions in Ukraine to the whole world. Putin tried to have the region recognized as Russian territory by holding fake referendums in 4 annexed regions. Russian leader announced that the annexed 4 regions based on the so-called referendum result. Russian leader Putin stated that the annexed region in Ukraine should be recognized as Russian territories in the coming days. Putin stated that they will not hesitate to respond with all the means at their disposal in case of any threat or attempt to attack the annexed regions. Under the threat was Putin's use of nuclear weapons if necessary. The threat that Russian leader would not hesitate to use nuclear weapons to defend the annexed areas was met with backlash by Ukraine and its allies. Ukrainian President Zelensky said that if Putin carried out a nuclear strike in Ukraine, it would be disastrous. EU and NATO member countries did not remain blind to Putin's threat. Ukraine's allies, who warned Putin harshly, said that if they felt that Russia was preparing to use any nuclear weapons in Ukraine, the necessary intervention would be taken against Russia. Moreover, Russia's threat to use nuclear weapons was not the first. Weeks before Russia invaded Ukraine, the Russian military discussed scenario of nuclear attack on Germany. Allegedly, Moscow was considering potential nuclear strikes on 3 targets in Germany. Nuclear-armed armies, including NATO forces, often discuss and practice nuclear-related warfare, although there has been no use of nuclear weapons in warfare since World War II. On the other hand, experts believe that the Russians deliberately set targets to intimidate the West, because they knew they were eavesdropping. While Russia didn't listen to the criticism directed at itself regarding the use of nuclear weapon, it made some claims over Ukraine to deflect the issue. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who met with the French, British and Turkish defense ministers, expressed his concerns over the allegation that Ukraine was preparing provocation using a dirty bomb. Later, Shoigu urged the Minister of China and India to warn about this dirty bomb. The Office of the President of Ukraine and Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine denied Shoigu's baseless accusations. Ukraine made great efforts to expose Russia's lie. After Russia's allegation, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba met with Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and agreed to send experts to Ukraine facilities where a dirty bomb is being developed, according to Russian propaganda fraud, to refute the Kremlin slander. Ukraine's partners stressed that they don't believe in these Russian frauds, but expressed concern that this may be Russia's preparation for a false flag operation. Russia and Ukraine's claims about each other caused a new tension between the parties. The offensive carried out by the Ukrainian army in the south of the country spread to the east of Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine turned into a fireplace when Ukrainian warriors attacked the Russian-occupied areas. Ukrainian Mykolaiv paratroopers eliminated Russian infantry and destroyed an enemy BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle in the Donetsk region. Soldiers from the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Air Strikes Force destroyed together with Russian soldiers and a BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle crew in one of the districts in the Donetsk region. The air strike forces of the Ukrainian armed forces succeeded in making many contributions to the cleansing of Ukraine from Russian invaders. Ukrainian paratroopers had managed to destroy the entire Russian 120mm mortar team, personnel and ammunition load. In Ukraine, sabotage has spread all region. Voices of conflict can be heard all over Ukraine, especially in the Kherson and Donetsk region. They seem to be making more efforts for their Ukrainian warriors. The Ukrainian army increased the intensity of the attack to clear Russian soldiers from Kherson. Russia has decided to evacuate the area in Kherson as a precaution against any Ukrainian attack. The evacuation process of residents in Kherson is still ongoing. Thousands of Kherson residents, under the direction of Russian commanders, set out for safer Russian territory. The Russian army is among the claims that Kherson residents are deployed to vacated houses. Considering the allegation that they heard, the Ukrainian authorities stated that they guessed that the Russian army didn't withdraw from Kherson, but that they were preparing to defend that region. In addition to their statement, Ukrainian officials said that they took into account the current situation of the Russian army in our attack plan in Kherson and continued to be cautious. The effect of the Ukraine and Russia war are felt all over the world. The economic efforts of the war in Ukraine continue to put countries in a difficult situation. In Paris, the capital of France, the French public reacted to government against the increases in energy prices. Another effect of the war in Ukraine is the food crisis. The president of Ukraine stated that the food crisis is much bigger than the previous months. Zelensky said Russia was deliberately trying to exacerbate the food crisis that began in September, when Ukrainian flagged ships were blocked by ships carrying foodstuffs. In addition to his statements, the Ukrainian leader said, "Today, a pretty predictable statement came from Russia. A statement came from Russia that they cancelled the grain export initiative. But in fact, Russia didn't take this decision today. Russia has deliberately begun to aggravate the food crisis by restricting the movement of Ukrainian ships. Since September, 176 ships that cannot follow their path have accumulated in the grain corridor. Some grain carriers have been waiting for more than 3 weeks. This is an absolutely deliberate blocked by Russia. This is Russia's absolutely transparent intention to return the threat of large-scale famine to Africa and Asia," he said. Zelensky noted that there is currently more than 2 million tons of food in the sea. This means that access of the food is actually getting worse more than 7 million consumers. Bulgaria, Egypt, Yemen, Bangladesh, Vietnam and other countries. Very different countries from different parts of the world. He noted that Russia attacked the Ukrainian Navy at least twice during the Grain Initiative operation. Precisely the forces that ensured the security of the grain corridor. A strong international response is now needed, both at the United Nations and other levels, particularly at G20 level, to Russian interference and deliberate harm. President of Ukraine Zelensky also made a reproach to the countries in G22. Zelensky, how can Russia be among the G20 if Russia is deliberately trying to bring hunger to several countries? This is bullshit. Russia has no place in the G20. All partners see this artificial sheep tail. They see what Russia is doing to disrupt its grain enterprise. They see that even the grain vessels that have been contracted for the poorest countries under the United Nations Food Program are not guaranteed to pass through the sea route. Russia is doing everything possible to ensure that millions of Africans, millions of residents of the Middle East and South Asia find themselves in conditions of artificial famine or at least serious price rises. As reported, Russia accused Ukraine and the United Kingdom of terrorist attacks on Black Sea fleet ships and civilian ships that guarantee the security of the grain corridor, and announced its withdrawal from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba called on international community not to allow Russia to block the grain corridor that ensures food security for millions of people under a false pretext. The conflict in Ukraine do not only affect Russia and Ukraine. The effect of the war are felt all over the world. Russian leader Putin doesn't only harm himself and the Russian during the invasion of Ukraine. Every day, the war continues in Ukraine poses new threats. Thank you for watching us.